Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
In this thread, real-life encounters with unknown creatures. I haven't shared this story before with anyone. The only other people that know about this are the two friends that were with me at the time. Just to set up everything before I start, I have a huge field behind my home that sits on the edge of some very dense woods. No matter who the person was, everyone that saw the woods and got near them always would say that they got a bad feeling from them. This story happened about 6 years ago. B15 hanging out with my two best friends. It was later in the afternoon, the sun would be setting in about an hour. Decide to go out into field and ride my dirt bike. Take turns riding for a few hours. Is pitch black outside due to living in bumfuck nowhere. My turn to take it for a spin, so I hop on and start making laps. Get weird unsettling feeling every time I come close to tree line of the woods. Brush it off because fuck yay dirt bike. On the next lap my headlight illuminates the tree line and my eyes catch something. Think it was a deer, but back up and shine light on woods just to see. Something crouching behind stump, looks large, man-sized. Has clearly defined shoulders, looks like a canine-like head on a man's body. I want to nope the fuck out, but I'm frozen in fear. By now friends come running over to see why I'm just staring off into the woods. They're speechless. Thing begins to slowly move around stump without breaking eye contact. Got glimpse of full body, human-like, but that dog-shaped head WTF. Had enough, we all turn the fuck around and get the hell back to my house. Since that happened I have, along with another friend, seen some scary shit in his woods and around his home. I haven't seen anything around mine since then. If you would like to hear those stories, let me know.
Last June. Driving home late on old farm roads. No other cars, no houses for miles. See something run into the road. Hit it. Hear its skull crack on my front bumper. Feel like shit thinking I just killed a dog. Turn around. No body. Start heading back. See something like this but half the size with yellow eyes on side of road. Nope.jpg. Still try to convince myself it was a coyote. For the whole way home, at least 40 miles, the road was lined with fresh animal corpses and blood.
Here's an encounter my friend had that has always sent chills up my spine. He and I have discussed the things that have happened to us on many occasions, so I know his stories as well as I do mine. My friend lives in a house completely surrounded by some of the thickest woods I've ever seen. You have to drive through them for about 500 yards before you come up to his house. It starts with him going to a buddy's house one night. It was getting late, around 1 a.m. I believe he said, so he decided to leave and go home. The dude's house he was at is only about a quarter mile from his own home. As he was going to his truck, he said that things were illuminated by the moon and it was a clear night. Before he sat down in his truck, he saw something standing down in a field behind the house. He said the moment he looked at it he got the most terrifying and disturbing feeling he has ever had in his life. He said he could see the outline of whatever it was, because of the moon, but it was still dark, so all he could tell was that it was a blacked-out human-shaped mass. The part that shook him the most though was that he said it had dull glowing red eyes. He said it watched him for about 30 seconds then turned around and ran. He said he has never seen anything on two legs move so fast. Needless to say, he booked it home as fast as he could. When he got home, he told me he began to panic because what he saw really started to sink in. As he was going to his room, he passed by his large window that he has in his living room and saw whatever it was that he saw earlier staring in at him. Red eyes and all. When he saw that, he told me he ran the fuck to his room, locked his door, pinned himself in the fetal position between the wall and his dresser and began sobbing uncontrollably. 15 minutes or so later he called me and was completely irate on the phone. I calmed him down and went to his house just to give him some sense of mind. This is just one of the stories of this particular being.
Up here. This story is sort of a continuation of the red-eyed thing my friend saw, because this is my first encounter with it. I also forgot to mention that the sightings of this creature all happened over the last 2 years. It was midsummer back in 2012. This was all a few months after my friend's first sighting of this thing. My friend, we'll just call him Mike now, decided to have a get-together with me and 4 other friends. We all went over to his house and started a huge bonfire down at his fire pit. We were roasting marshmallows, drinking beer, having a fun-ass time, just goofing off. After a few hours we were still all just sitting around. One of the guys left, so it was just 5 of us. I noticed that Mike had been acting really weird for the past 20 minutes or so. I kept asking him what was wrong, but he kept saying nothing and just stayed quiet. He was acting distant, and kept looking into the woods. It was starting to bother me, so I took him to the side and told him to tell me what the fuck was wrong with him. He looked scared out of his mind and was sort of stuttering. He finally came to where he could talk and got right up by my face and whispered while pointing to the woods, "It's been standing there watching us for the past half hour." Hearing him say that sent chills straight up my spine. Sure enough, I looked where he was pointing and saw 2 dim glowing eyes in the woods about 30 or 40 yards from the bonfire. The feeling that washed over me was complete terror, just an all-around sickening feeling. I kept staring at it, not wanting to look away. I could tell it was something because every now and then it looked like it would blink. It also made a swaying motion like a person does when they are standing around. We summoned up enough courage to go rejoin our friends who were completely oblivious at the time. When we returned, they asked where we went and what was wrong because they could clearly tell something was up. I said, "Try not to freak out," and pointed towards the woods. Everyone looked for a few seconds, then instantly turned around with pale faces. Everyone was silent. We would have headed back to the house and got the fuck out, but the trail that led to the house was right by where the fucker was standing. We just sat there, waited and watched. A few minutes later the thing began to move, not breaking eye contact, still watching us. I could hear the sound of it breaking twigs. It sounded like this thing had some considerable weight to it. It walked another 30 or 40 feet and stopped to watch again. That's when we all gathered up the collective courage to make a break for the trail, which was completely pitch black. I've never ran so fast in my life. It felt like it was just going to come up behind me and grab me at any moment. I never looked back. We all stayed Mike's house until morning. Mike has encountered this thing a few more times, and I have one more time. The sightings stopped around 5 months ago. None of us have any idea what we were seeing.
I shouldn't be reading this stuff. I just moved to a very rural area with nothing, a dense forest and cattle fields. I go to work early in the morning and one time snow was forecast, so I parked my car about 3 miles from my house so that I could walk to it in the morning so I wouldn't have to call in for work. It was about 5 a.m. when I started walking and that shit was terrifying. I felt like shining eyes were surrounding me due to snow glinting off my mag light. I felt defenseless even with my big hunting knife. There were fresh animal tracks in the snow that didn't look like anything I'd seen before. Some were obviously cat and dog tracks, but there were some that looked indescribably bizarre. I kept hearing twigs snapping around me. I wanted to run, but I couldn't because the ice under the snow kept making me fall on my ass. I will just call in next time it snows that much. Fuck all that.
Anything else happen in that area you've heard about? I have a semi-innawoods story that I'd like to share, but this thread seems pretty much dead, so I'm not sure it's worth it.
Well, I'm renting an old farmhouse situated on a cattle farm in southern Kentucky. I'm a fairly skeptical person in terms of the paranormal, however, I'm open-minded. I tend to dismiss a lot of odd things that happen in this house, like loud banging coming from the kitchen at night, and sometimes it sounds like men are talking in the next room even in the daytime. I don't have any neighbors, so that sort of weirds me out. At sundown, I often hear what can only be described as a choir of animal noises from every direction. Crows cawing, coyotes yipping, dogs barking, other noises I can't place. It's disconcerting when you're outside in the midst of it all. Well, now that I'm thinking about being outside at sundown, there was this one thing I pushed back inside my mind to forget. I was out burning paper trash after dark. The burn pile is under the only floodlight in the yard, so it's a bit difficult to see out past the light, but on a full moon you can see decently. I was just having a smoke and poking the fire when I heard something walking around in the field by me. I strained to look out, but couldn't see much, but as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw a black mass sitting in the field. It looked pretty large and it could see some flickering from the fire reflecting on its eyes, white in color. I decided my eyes were playing tricks on me, so I continued to poke at the fire until it died down. I looked back after a while and it was gone. I have no idea what it was. I dismissed it once again and went inside.
This is a real-life encounter with creatures, but not unknown creatures. Still made me shit bricks though. Be about 16. Hanging with my cousin at his house. He lives in a very rural area, is the closest hole-in-the-wall gas station, is a 30-minute drive, and it's the only store anywhere near him. We're walking up his pitch-black road to meet some people for a game of manhunt. Keep hearing something, but whatever, continue to shoot the shit while we walk. Get near the fork in the road and hear some quick light movement to my left, as if something sat up. We both look over and there's 7 or 8 coyotes just staring at us. 5 seconds of staring at them so both we and the coyotes can finally grasp the situation. We turn and book it one way, the coyotes book it the other way. I didn't know they ran off in the other direction, all I heard was coyotes making noises and the sound of them running, so I assumed they're running after us. Turn his road from a paved road to a brick road as we go. Kind of dumb actually, because there's only been like 2 deaths by coyotes in North America in its history, but during situations like that, these kinds of facts tend to leave you momentarily.
Alright, I have one. So I must have been about 18 with 2 friends. We drove a couple miles out to a public park, the kind of place with several soccer fields, a couple baseball fields. There was a river nearby, and this entire area was largely surrounded by woods or farmland. It was a secluded dozen square miles or so in a relatively average suburb area. So anyway, it's probably about 11 at night. We decide to go to the swing set that is close to the parking lot at this public park. We're on the swings for a few minutes, laughing, having a good time. There is grass around the swing set, about 20 yards behind it is woods. All of a sudden, I see out of the corner of my eye, right on the edge of the grass in the woods, a sort of tan human-looking figure, probably 5.5 feet tall. I see it make a motion of some kind and there is a loud crack noise. It sounded like a heavy stick hitting the trunk of a tree. One of my friends says, "What the fuck is that?" Immediately all 3 of us book it off the swings and sprint to the car, get in, and speed off. For the next minute all 3 of us are pretty much in shock, basically yelling, "What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?" To this day, several years later, none of us have any idea what we saw, heard. I try to rationalize what it could have been in my mind. Even if it was a buck with antlers, it must have hit its antlers hard against the trunk of that tree it was next to in order to produce such a loud noise. Honestly, I have no idea. It looked tan, brown in color. My best guess that it was a human holding a log, heavy stick that hit it against the trunk of the tree just to fuck with us. Other than that, I have no idea what it could have been.
Grew up and still live in Oregon. I love the coast and go all the time. My dad and I go off trail a bunch and explore the gullies and old growth. This one time we came up on this giant rock on a beach. If you know the Pacific Northwest coast, you know there are lots of rocks with little, but thick groves of trees. This one was especially thick. We climb up the side and bushwhack it into the trees. Hard going at first, reach clearing in what seems to be the very center of the rock. Suddenly notice the birds and other animals aren't making noises, only the sound of the surf. Get a little uneasy. Hear this tapping sound like someone is knocking a branch against a tree. More and more of these sounds pop up until it's all the way around the clearing. Dad pushes me forward and yells, "Get the fuck out." We both book it, something is crashing behind us. We reach the edge of the rock and just jump it to the sand. I risk a look back as we run down the beach. There were 3 long gray hairless faces peering behind the bushes. Turn around and fucking sprint. You experience a lot of weird shit in the Pacific Northwest. I think that's why I love it so much.
Up here, I've got one more story of an encounter I had in the same woods that this red-eyed creature was seen a multitude of times. This encounter happened towards the end of summer. I was hanging out with my friend Mike at his house. The two of us were leaving to go get some food. Like I said before, his home is surrounded in some very thick woods and foliage. It was around 8 or 9 at night, so it was very dark, especially at the top of his driveway. We were about to start the truck when down the driveway to the left we noticed the now familiar sight of 2 red eyes looking up at us from the darkness. Like usual, a sense of fear came over us, but it was different this time. It felt like I was truly in danger. It kept staring and we remained motionless. We noticed something that still gives me chills. The shape of the eyes were different this time. The eyes we were used to seeing resembled a teardrop in shape. The rounded parts situated towards where the nose would be and the sharper parts going diagonally towards the hairline. These eyes, however, were sharper in appearance, narrower and angrier in appearance. The most chilling part is that we noticed each eye had a black slit in them. Similar to what you'd see in a snake or cat. The other eyes didn't have this. They were pure red. As of then, this thing was no more than 20 yards from us but still in the tree line. A few minutes passed and the thing began to move towards us. Mike then turned on the truck, ready to leave as fast as we could. As soon as the truck turned on, the thing went from a brisk pace to a fast run towards us. The truck was in drive, and we were moving before I even knew it. As we sped by it down the pitch-black driveway, I caught a glimpse of the thing, my first actual glimpse of whatever it was. All I could see was that it was large, very large. We finally made it to the road and headed in town, went to McDonald's, and sat there, terrified. Not wanting to go back.
You're not alone. I've seen something as well working at a state park in Indiana. I've posted it on here before, so some people might remember it. Be me 2 years ago. Working third shift at State Park. Night security and a bunch of people say a lot of people bail. Don't get specific, just say that people see weird shit and bail. Entire season goes without a hitch until fall. Sitting outside my post cooking in the fire pit. Girlfriend at the time spending the night out there with me. They allowed it. Night is going like normal. Cuddling when a blood-curdling howl scream rips through the silence. Started out high-pitched like someone screaming for help and shifted quickly into a deep bellowing roar. We both instantly shoot out of our fold-up chairs before the sound even shifts into the roar because it was so unnatural. I try to remain calm but very startled. Girlfriend is utterly terrified and ready to run into my guardhouse at the first sign of trouble. I scan the tree line and field to my left next to the office looking for the source of the sound. Girlfriend points at something. Female deer is up on its hind legs freaking out and looking behind the main office across from me. Scan view again and see a large black humanoid figure bolt from behind the offices where the sound originated. It runs through the streetlight behind the offices, giving me a short, clear glimpse. Looked like it was covered in dense hair, either black or dark brown. Broad shoulders and a huge gait that didn't seem forced, almost like it was not even trying to move so quickly. Passes behind a large tree and the branches cover it from a bit below the shoulders up. It seems to be bolting at the deer. Deer finally stops kicking the air and bolts into the darkness. Large figure follows it. Girlfriend saw the thing chasing the deer and had bailed into the gatehouse, hiding in the doorway silent with fear. Security checks out the area to ease her mind but finds nothing. They finally explain what happened previously. Third shift out here has had a history of people seeing large black hair-covered humanoids, usually much taller than any human or deer, going back generations. One guy who is now a police officer was working with the head of security and they saw 3 of them cross in front of their car in a remote section of park property. Another saw one walking down the stretch of road in front of the gatehouse at 3 a.m. thinking it was a person until they realized it was taller than corn in fall and freaked. They have had several reports in recent years of people complaining about rocks being thrown at them or their tents. Stories just keep coming. They have told me a lot of things that apparently the park keeps hush-hush besides this so that people don't avoid the park, and apparently it's normal for state parks to do it. In morning I go check the tree it ran behind and the lowest branches were a solid foot over my head and I'm a bit over 6 foot and it extended past those branches' height. Girlfriend never came out again. And I don't spend massive amounts of time outside the gatehouse now. I fear one of these seasons I'll turn to a window and see some big thing glaring in at me hunched over. I'll probably hide in the bathroom all night and call the cops. Prior to this I had one single incident. I didn't know what to think about it at the time. I had a couple friends come out and chill with me. They left to get cigarettes and almost as soon as they turned out of sight a knocking begins as I sat next to the fire. It was coming from the woods opposite of my office. It was very rhythmic and did not sound like the normal sounds deer or other animals make. Never heard it again. I tried to ignore it at first, but it never stopped. After a few minutes of it I hid in the gatehouse and opened the window on that side and the sound continued like I had never moved. It continues the entire length they were gone until the headlights of their car illuminated my post. It stopped instantly and never kicked up again. Looking back now it just adds to this situation. There were many of nights it felt like something was just out of sight in the woods. The knocking came from watching me, but I just wrote it off as my mind playing games with me.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.